The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Federation buzzed with conversation as delegates from 100 worlds gathered for the annual technology exhibition. Crystalline beings from Zephyr Prime clinked their glass-like appendages together in greeting, while the massive stone creatures from Petra rolled slowly between display booths. The air shimmered with translation fields as dozens of languages merged into a harmonious babble of scientific discussion. At the center of it all stood the newest member species, humanity. Their representative, Marcus Chun, stood quietly beside a modest display table that looked almost embarrassingly simple compared to the elaborate presentation surrounding it. Where other species had floating holographic displays showing off-gravity manipulators, matter transmuters, and consciousness transfer devices, the human booth contained what appeared to be nothing more than basic camping equipment. Commander Vextala of the Vorthan Empire approached with her entourage, her 6 arms gesturing dismissively at the human display. The Vorthans were known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and their equally advanced sense of superiority. Their black carapaces gleamed under the hall's artificial lighting, and their compound eyes reflected the colorful displays around them. "So this is what the newest species brings to our gathering," Vextala said, her voice carrying clearly across the nearby area. Several other delegates began to gather, drawn by the commanding tone of one of the Federation's most influential members. "Primitive tools that our ancestors abandoned millennia ago." Marcus remained calm, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched more delegates approach. He had expected this. Every species that joined the Federation faced a period of scrutiny, of proving their worth among civilizations that had mastered faster-than-light travel when humans were still discovering fire. Xtala picked up a simple black backpack from the display, turning it over in her upper arms while her lower arms gestured to her followers. "Look at this crude construction. Fabric and metal fasteners. We have storage devices that can hold the contents of entire cities in spaces smaller than an atom." She tossed the backpack back onto the table with a dismissive clatter. "And this," she continued, lifting a pair of worn leather boots. "Do they actually expect their feet to carry them places? We transcended the need for physical locomotion before we achieved spaceflight." Laughter rippled through the growing crowd of onlookers. The Vorthan commander moved to a water bottle, holding it up like evidence in a trial. "Liquid stored in primitive containers when we can extract moisture directly from atmospheric particles." She set it down and picked up a folded tent. "And temporary shelters made of synthetic materials when we can manipulate matter itself to create permanent structures anywhere we choose." Marcus watched as more species joined the crowd. The graceful ethereals floated closer, their translucent forms pulsing with curiosity. Several representatives from the machine civilization of Nexus Prime rolled forward on their treads, sensors extended. Even some of the usually aloof psions had turned their attention from their mental communications to observe the scene. "Tell me, human," Vextala said, directing her compound gaze toward Marcus. "Why do you cling to these relics of a primitive past? Your species has been given access to Federation technology. Surely you understand that evolution means leaving behind the tools of lesser beings." The hall had grown quieter now, conversations dying away as delegates sensed drama unfolding. Marcus stepped forward slightly, his expression still calm, but something shifting in his posture that made several of the more perceptive species take notice. "You assume this is all we have," Marcus said quietly. His voice carried well in the hushed space, trained from years of addressing both human military personnel and alien dignitaries. "You assume we brought these items because we haven't learned to make better ones." Xtala's laugh was sharp and clicking. "Are you suggesting otherwise? That your species chooses to use inferior technology when superior alternatives exist?" Her followers joined in the amusement, the sound spreading through the gathered crowd. "I'm suggesting," Marcus replied, reaching for the simple zipper on his jacket, "that you don't understand what you're looking at." Something in his tone made the laughter die away. The hall fell into an expectant silence as delegates pressed closer, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Marcus's hand paused at his collar, and for the first time since the confrontation began, he smiled. "You want to see what human gear really is?" he asked, his voice carrying a note that made several species unconsciously step back. "What's designed for? Or designed for?" ZYXThala's compound eyes glittered with anticipated triumph. Please, enlighten us all about your primitive technology. Marcus nodded once, almost to himself, and began to remove his jacket. As the simple black material slipped from his shoulders, something impossible became visible underneath. The crowd collectively gasped, translator fields struggling to convey the dozens of expressions of shock and disbelief that erupted from the assembled delegates. What they had assumed was a normal human in civilian clothes was nothing of the kind. Beneath the simple jacket was a form-fitting suit that seemed to absorb light itself. The material looked like liquid shadow made solid, flowing across Marcus's frame like it was alive. As he folded the jacket and set it aside, the suit began to respond to the ambient lighting of the hall, patterns of energy threading through its surface like veins of captured lightning. This is a Human Defense Corps tactical suit, Marcus said conversationally, as if he were discussing the weather instead of revealing technology that was making some of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations step backward in alarm. Standard issue for our exploration and diplomatic teams. Commander ZYXThala's confident posture had shifted. Her 6 arms were no longer gesturing dismissively, but had moved into what any military observer would recognize as a defensive configuration. Impossible. Our scans showed you were wearing primitive organic materials. Marcus smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and terrifying. Your scan saw exactly what the suit wanted them to see. One of its basic functions. He touched a point on his wrist, and suddenly the air around him shimmered. For a moment, the delegates saw double the human they had been watching and a slightly different figure that seemed to occupy the same space. Active camouflage, he explained as the shimmer faded. Not just visual, but across all sensor spectrums. The suit can mimic any material, any energy signature, any thermal reading. Right now, it's showing you what it really is because I'm allowing it to. Dr. Velteron of the Science Collective, a being whose species had developed some of the Federation's most sensitive detection equipment, raised one of her delicate appendages. That level of sensor deception would require computational power beyond what any personal device could contain. You're thinking too small, Marcus replied. He reached for his simple black backpack, and as his hand touched it, the entire device transformed. What had appeared to be fabric and metal suddenly revealed itself as a crystalline matrix that seemed to contain swirling galaxies. This isn't a backpack. It's a portable quantum computer linked directly to our home defense network. Every piece of equipment we carry is connected to the combined processing power of humanity's entire technological infrastructure. The implications of this statement sent ripples of unease through the assembled crowd. Several delegates began urgent communications with their home worlds, while others started backing away from the human display. Marcus noticed their reactions and continued in the same calm tone. The water bottle isn't just for storage. It's a molecular assembler capable of breaking down any matter and reconstructing it as needed. Food, medicine, breathable atmosphere, even complex tools, all from raw materials. He picked up the bottle, and as he did, it unfolded like origami made of light, revealing components that hurt to look at directly. The tent, he continued, touching the folded material, is a portable habitat that can expand to house 1,000 people, maintain perfect environmental conditions in any atmosphere or vacuum, and if necessary, achieve orbital velocity as an escape pod. The tent began to glow softly, and delegates could see that what they had taken for simple fabric was actually composed of materials that their most advanced scientists couldn't identify. Commander ZYXThala found her voice again, though it had lost its earlier confidence. Why would you disguise such technology? Why make it appear primitive? Marcus's expression grew serious for the first time. Because, Commander, we learned early in our history that it's better to be underestimated than feared. When other species see primitive camping gear, they feel comfortable, superior, safe. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the now silent crowd. They don't ask the hard questions, such as, Dr. Veltran asked, though her translator conveyed reluctance in her voice, such as why a species that only achieved spaceflight 50 years ago was invited to join a federation that typically requires centuries of technological development. Marcus reached for his boots, and as he touched them, they began to shift and change, revealing systems that several delegates recognized as being beyond their own technological capabilities, such as how we managed to cross the galactic void to reach Federation space in the first place, when our public technology should have made that impossible. The boots had become something that looked more like the feet of a war machine than footwear, with energy matrices pulsing along their surfaces, such as why our home system has remained completely undetectable to Federation sensors, even though we've given you our coordinates. Marcus straightened, and for the first time, the delegates could see the true scale of what they were dealing with. The human wasn't wearing equipment. He was integrated with it, a seamless fusion of biology and technology that represented a completely different approach to advancement. The hall had fallen into absolute silence. Even the usual background hum of various species' life support systems seemed muted, as if the very air was holding its breath. Marcus looked around at the sea of alien faces, expressions of shock, fear, and dawning understanding, creating a tableau that would be remembered in Federation history. "You see," Marcus said quietly, "you assumed that what you were looking at was all there was to see. You assumed that because something appeared simple, it was simple. You assumed that because we were new to your Federation, we were new to technology itself." He began walking among the displays of other civilizations, his transformed equipment moving with him like extensions of his own body. Where his presence passed, their most advanced technology seemed suddenly quaint, like children's toys compared to tools they couldn't comprehend. But, most importantly, Marcus continued, "You assumed that humanity came to the Federation seeking to learn." He stopped and turned back to face the assembled delegates, and his smile had returned, but now it carried implications that made several species unconsciously activate their own defensive systems. "We didn't come here to learn from you." The silence stretched on until Ambassador Thyrix of the Core Worlds, the Federation's eldest member species, stepped forward. Their ancient form moved slowly, supported by technology that had kept them alive for over 2,000 years. When they spoke, their voice carried the weight of millennia of diplomatic experience. "Then, why are you here, human?" Marcus turned to face the ancient being, his transformed equipment now humming with barely contained energy. "We came to evaluate you," he said simply, "to determine whether the galactic community was ready for the truth about what's out there beyond your borders." A chill ran through the assembled delegates. The Federation controlled nearly a quarter of the galaxy, with thousands of member worlds and technologies that had seemed insurmountable. The idea that they were being evaluated by newcomers was almost incomprehensible. Dr. Voltaron's scientific curiosity overcame her growing fear. What truth? What lies beyond our space? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and in that silence, the delegates began to notice something disturbing. The advanced displays around the hall, technologies that represented the pinnacle of dozens of civilizations' achievements, had begun to flicker. Not malfunction, respond, as if they were recognizing something in the human's presence and reacting accordingly. 3 million years ago, Marcus began, when most of your species were still learning to use fire, something swept through this galaxy. Something that consumed worlds, harvested civilizations, and left behind only empty space where billions of lives had existed. The flickering of the technology displays intensified. Several delegates noticed that their own personal devices were beginning to behave strangely. Screens showing data they hadn't requested, sensors detecting energies that shouldn't exist. The survivors called them the Devourers. Marcus continued. They weren't just conquerors or destroyers. They were farmers, and the galaxy was their crop. They cultivated civilizations, allowed them to grow and develop, and then harvested them when they reached the proper level of advancement. Commander Zwextala's compound eyes were fixed on her personal scanner, which was displaying readings that made no sense. "This is impossible. If such beings existed, we would have found evidence. Archaeological sites, technological remnants." "You have," Marcus said quietly. "You call them ancient mysteries, structures that don't match any known civilization, technologies that seem impossibly advanced, dead zones where nothing grows and sensors can't penetrate." He paused, watching recognition dawn on several faces. You've been finding their feeding grounds. The ethereals, usually calm to the point of seeming emotionless, began to pulse with agitated energy. Their natural psychic abilities were picking up something that terrified them, not from Marcus himself, but from the implications of what he was saying. The Devourers operate on cycles, Marcus explained. They sweep through the galaxy, harvest everything worth taking, and then retreat to wherever they wait between feedings. Based on our analysis of their previous cycles, they're due to return within the next 50 years. The technology displays throughout the hall were now openly malfunctioning, showing star charts, battle formations, and weapon schematics that none of the assembled species recognized. It was as if Marcus's presence was activating sleeping protocols in their most advanced systems. Ambassador Thyrix spoke again, their ancient voice trembling slightly. And humanity's role in this. Marcus's expression grew grim. We're what survived the last time they came through. Not all of us. Most of our worlds were taken. Our people harvested like grain. But some escaped, found ways to hide, to adapt, to become something the Devourers couldn't easily consume. He touched his wrist again, and suddenly, the air around him filled with holographic displays showing star systems the Federation had never seen. Massive installations hidden in the void between galaxies, fleets of ships that dwarfed anything in Federation space, and beings that wore technology like Marcus did, seamlessly integrated, impossibly advanced. We've spent 3 million years preparing for their return, Marcus said. Building defenses, developing weapons, creating technologies that can fight beings who treat matter and energy like clay to be shaped. We've become something that can stand against them. Dr. Velteron stared at the holographic displays, her scientific mind struggling to process what she was seeing. The power requirements alone, the resource base necessary to build such things. We've had 3 million years, Marcus repeated. And we've been very busy. The displays shifted, showing worlds being moved, stars being modified, entire solar systems transformed into weapons platforms. But we can't do it alone. The Devourers are returning to a galaxy that's more populated than ever before. More civilizations to harvest, more resources to claim. Commander Zwexthala found her voice again, though it was much quieter than before. You want our help? Marcus shook his head. We won't give you a choice. The Federation can continue as it is, confident in your technologies and your place in the galaxy. When the Devourers return, you'll face them with weapons and defenses designed to fight other civilizations like yourselves. He paused, letting the implications sink in. Or you can join the real war effort. Learn what we've learned. Become what you need to become to survive. The ancient ambassador Thyrix stepped closer, their life support systems whirring as they processed the magnitude of what they were hearing. What would that require? Everything you think you know about technology, about physics, about the nature of reality itself. It would have to change, Marcus replied. You would have to become something more than what you are now. Something that can fight beings who treat the laws of nature as suggestions. He gestured to his equipment, which was now openly displaying capabilities that violated several supposedly fundamental principles of science. This isn't just technology. It's evolution. We didn't just build better tools. We became the tools. We integrated ourselves with our creations until the distinction became meaningless. The hall erupted in chaos as delegates began urgent communications with their homeworlds. Some species huddled together in fear, others began demanding proof, and still others started arguing about the implications for Federation policy. Marcus stood calmly in the center of the storm, his transformed gear continuing to interface with the hall's systems and reveal hidden capabilities in technology the Federation had considered fully understood. I know this is a lot to process, he said, his voice somehow carrying clearly over the noise. But you need to understand, the choice has to be made soon. The advanced scouts of the Devourer fleets are already moving through the outer rim of the galaxy. That statement cut through the chaos like a blade, bringing sudden silence back to the hall. They're already here? Marcus nodded grimly. 3 Federation colonies have gone silent in the past month. Your monitoring stations recorded what appeared to be natural disasters, stellar collapses, asteroid impacts, plague outbreaks. Very clean, very plausible explanations. He touched his wrist device, and New holographic displays materialize showing detailed sensor readings and analysis data. But when you know what to look for, the signs are obvious. Energy signatures that don't match any known natural phenomena. Quantum disturbances that indicate massive matter conversion. And, most telling of all, the complete absence of any debris or survivors. Dr. Velterun studied the data with growing horror. Her species had developed some of the most sophisticated sensor equipment in Federation space, and she could see patterns in the readings that her people had missed. The Kepler colony, the energy readings we detected were artificial. Harvesting equipment, Marcus confirmed. They're testing your defenses, studying your technologies, determining how much resistance to expect when the main fleets arrive. The scouts operate the same way they did 3 million years ago. They take remote settlements first, gather intelligence, then move on to more populated targets. The Vorthan commander had been unusually quiet since Marcus's revelations began. Now she stepped forward, her military training overriding her shock. How long do we have? Based on their historical patterns, 18 months before the first major fleet enters Federation space. 5 years before they reach the core worlds. Marcus's equipment was now displaying tactical analyses that made Federation military planning look like children playing with toys. Unless something has changed their timeline. Ambassador Thyrix raised one ancient appendage. What could change it? Marcus was quiet for a moment, and, for the first time since removing his jacket, he looked uncertain. Us. Our preparations. If they've detected what we've been building, they might accelerate their schedule. He gestured to the displays around him. This technology I'm showing you is already obsolete by human standards. What we're actually using to prepare for the war would be incomprehensible even to most of my own species. The implications hit the delegates like a physical blow. If what Marcus was showing them was considered primitive by human standards, then what did their actual war machine look like? Commander Zuaxthala's military mind was already working on the tactical problems. Your people have been preparing for 3 million years. Why reveal yourselves now? Why not simply handle the threat yourself? Because we tried that last time, Marcus replied, and something in his voice made everyone in the hall pay closer attention. 3 million years ago, when the Devourers first came, humanity was part of a galactic civilization, much like the Federation. We had allies, trade partners, mutual defense treaties. He paused, and the holographic displays shifted to show what looked like historical records. Star charts with thousands of inhabited systems, trade routes connecting hundreds of species, the infrastructure of a galaxy-spanning civilization. When a threat became apparent, the dominant species decided they could handle it themselves. They had superior technology, vast fleets, and the confidence that comes from never having faced a real existential threat. The star chart began to change, systems winking out one by one like candles being extinguished. They were harvested first. Their confidence made them prime targets. The displays now showed the systematic collapse of that ancient civilization. Fleets being destroyed, worlds being stripped bare, entire species vanishing from the galaxy in what appeared to be mere decades. We survived because we were considered primitive, Marcus continued. The Devourers focused on the advanced civilizations first, giving us time to adapt, to hide, to become something they wouldn't expect. But we learned that isolation has its limits. There are too many of them, and they're too well organized for any single species to stand against them. Dr. Velterun's scientific curiosity compelled her to ask the question everyone was thinking. What exactly are these Devourers? What kind of beings could pose such a threat? Marcus hesitated, and for the first time, he looked genuinely disturbed. We're not entirely sure they're beings in any sense you would understand. Our best analysis suggests they're synthetic constructs, machines, but not like anything your civilizations have created. They appear to be self-modifying, self-improving systems that have been optimizing themselves for consumption and warfare for millions of years. The holographic displays shifted again, showing sensor recordings of structures that hurt to look at directly. Geometric forms that seem to exist in more dimensions than should be possible, moving with purpose that suggested intelligence, but not consciousness. They don't communicate, they don't negotiate, they don't seem to feel pain or fear or any emotion we can recognize. They simply consume everything useful and move on to the next target. Marcus's voice had grown quiet, almost reverent. We think they might be the final creation of whatever species originally built them. A perfect solution to resource scarcity that outlived its creators by millions of years. The silence that followed was different from the earlier quiet. This was the silence of beings contemplating their own mortality on a galactic scale. Ambassador Thyrix finally spoke, their ancient voice carrying the weight of their species' long history. "What exactly are you proposing we do?" "Join us," Marcus replied simply. "Not as junior partners or subjects, but as true allies. We'll share everything we've learned, all the technologies we've developed, all the strategies we've devised. In return, you contribute your resources, your populations, your unique capabilities to the war effort." He gestured around the hall at the assembled delegates. "Every species here has something we need. The Vorthan's tactical expertise, the ethereal psychic abilities, the collective's analytical capabilities, even the core world's diplomatic experience. Separately, you're all potential victims. Together, we might be able to create something the Devourers haven't seen before." Commander Zoyaxthala studied the tactical displays with professional interest. Despite her fear, she couldn't help but be impressed by the scope of the human preparations. What would this alliance look like? How would it function? Marcus touched his wrist again, and the displays changed to show organizational charts and resource allocation plans that spanned multiple galaxies. Complete integration. Your worlds will be connected to the defense network we've been building. Your populations would have access to the enhancement technologies that allow beings like me to exist. Your military forces would be equipped with weapons that can actually hurt the Devourers. Dr. Velteron was studying the technical specifications with growing amazement. The energy requirements for such enhancement. You would need to modify the fundamental structure of matter itself, which is exactly what we've learned to do, Marcus confirmed. The same technology that allows my equipment to reshape reality can be applied to biological systems. Every member of the Alliance would become something more than they were: stronger, faster, more resilient, more capable of surviving what's coming. The delegates looked around at each other, seeing their fellow beings with new eyes. The idea of fundamental transformation was both exciting and terrifying. "But, understand," Marcus continued, his tone becoming more serious, "this isn't something you can partially commit to. Once the enhancement process begins, there's no going back. Once your worlds are connected to our defense network, you become a target just like we are. The Devourers will see you as a threat to be eliminated rather than a resource to be harvested." The choice he was offering them was becoming clear: evolve or be consumed. Transform into something that could fight the unthinkable, or remain as they were and hope that their current technology would be enough. Looking around the hall at the faces of delegates from 100 worlds, Marcus could see the moment when they truly understood what he was asking of them. 3 hours later, the Grand Assembly Hall had been transformed into something resembling a war room. Representatives huddled in species-specific groups, engaged in heated debates that their translators struggled to convey. Emergency communications channels buzzed with traffic as worlds across the Federation received updates on the situation. Marcus stood at the center of it all, his equipment now fully revealed and interfacing directly with the hall's systems. Through the connection, he was providing real-time data to any delegate who requested it: tactical analyses, historical records, technological specifications that proved every claim he had made. Ambassador Thyrix approached him, moving more quickly than their ancient form should have allowed. "Our analysis teams have verified your historical data. The pattern matches records we dismissed as myth. But my people have one critical question." "Ask it," Marcus replied. "If your species has become so advanced, why do you still appear human? Why maintain biological forms at all?" Marcus smiled, and for the first time since the revelations began, it was genuinely warm. "Because we learned something important during our 3 million years of preparation. Power without purpose is just destruction. Technology without humanity is just machinery." He gestured to the chaos around them. "We could have arrived here as energy beings or machine consciousnesses or any of a dozen other forms we've experimented with. But we chose to remain recognizable because we want our allies to know who they're fighting alongside." Dr. Velteron had been analyzing the technical data Marcus provided. Now she looked up from her displays with an expression of scientific wonder. The applications of this technology, we could solve resource scarcity, eliminate disease, even extend consciousness beyond biological death. All of which you'll need to survive what's coming, Marcus confirmed. The Devourers don't just harvest raw materials. They take knowledge, consciousness, anything that represents organized information. Traditional concepts of death become meaningless when they can extract and process the patterns that make up thinking being. Commander Zoyakthala had been consulting with her military advisors through encrypted channels. When she returned to the conversation, her posture had changed completely. My people have a question about the tactical situation. You mentioned advanced scouts. Have they detected your preparations? Marcus was quiet for a moment, and several delegates noticed that his equipment briefly shifted to what appeared to be a more defensive configuration. We believe so. 3 of our outer monitoring stations went silent 6 months ago. We found remnants, evidence that something had been studying our technology. The implications sent ripples of unease through the assembled groups. If the Devourers were already adapting to human countermeasures, the timeline for preparing defenses might be even shorter than estimated. Which brings us to the most critical point, Marcus continued. This choice has to be made now, and it has to be unanimous. The Devourers excel at exploiting division and hesitation. If some Federation worlds join the Alliance while others remain neutral, it creates weak points they can exploit. Senator Crix of the Rim World Federation had remained silent throughout most of the discussion. Now, they stepped forward, their crystalline form resonating with harmonic frequencies that conveyed deep concern. You're asking us to fundamentally alter our entire civilization based on the threat of beings that might not return for decades. How can we make such a choice with certainty? Before Marcus could answer, every personal device in the hall began screaming alarm simultaneously. The delegates spun around in confusion as their communication systems activated emergency protocols without authorization. Marcus's equipment blazed with activity as it processed incoming data streams. His expression grew grim as he absorbed information that was flowing in faster than most biological minds could follow. The choice just became easier, he said quietly. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures at the galactic rim. The advanced fleets are moving faster than we anticipated. The holographic displays throughout the hall shifted to show real-time sensor data. Formations of objects were moving through space at velocities that violated several understood principles of physics, leaving distortion patterns in their wake that suggested technologies beyond anything the Federation had imagined. How long? Commander Zoyakthala asked, her military training taking over completely. Marcus's equipment continued processing data, cross-referencing with databases that spanned millions of years of accumulated knowledge. At their current rate of approach, the first attacks will hit outer Federation territories in 3 months. Core worlds have maybe a year before the main assault begins. The chaos in the hall reached a crescendo as delegates realized they were looking at sensor readings of their own impending destruction. Emergency evacuation protocols were being discussed, desperate plans for hidden colonies and refugee fleets. Marcus raised his voice to carry over the noise. There's another option. The human defense fleet is in position to move immediately. We can protect Federation worlds, but only if you accept integration with our systems. The choice has to be made right now. Ambassador Thyrix's ancient voice cut through the chaos with surprising authority. What does immediate integration require? Quantum communication networks installed on every world, enhancement facilities for your populations, and military integration with our defense forces. Marcus replied without hesitation. The process is irreversible and will change every aspect of your civilizations. But your people will survive. Dr. Veltron looked up from her analysis of the approaching fleet data. The alternative is extinction. The alternative, Marcus confirmed, is to fight beings who have perfected the art of consuming civilizations for millions of years, using technology they've already adapted to counter. The hall fell silent except for the ongoing alarms and emergency communications. Every delegate present understood that they were witnessing one of the most crucial moments in galactic history. The choice between transformation and extinction, between becoming something new and ceasing to exist entirely. Commander Zoyakthala was the first to speak. The Vorthan Empire accepts alliance with humanity. Her compound eyes fixed on Marcus with newfound respect. We've spent millennia believing we were the apex predators of this galaxy. It's time we learn from a species that actually survived the real predators. One by one, the other delegates stepped forward. The ethereals pulsed their agreement and harmonized light patterns. Dr. Veltarun spoke for the Science Collective's acceptance. Even the traditionally cautious core worlds committed their ancient resources to the Alliance. Marcus nodded as each species committed to the Alliance, his equipment already beginning to establish the quantum communication links that would transform the Federation into something entirely new. Welcome to the real galactic community. Now, let's get to work. We have a war to win. As the transformation began, energy patterns unlike anything the galaxy had seen before started flowing between worlds, connecting civilizations in ways that transcended simple communication. The delegates could feel their own awareness expanding as they became part of something vast and purposeful. Through the quantum links, they caught their first glimpse of what humanity had truly become during their 3 million years of preparation. Not just a species, but a force of nature dedicated to ensuring that consciousness and creativity could survive in a universe that seemed determined to consume them. Outside the hall, across hundreds of worlds, the process of evolution began. The galaxy was about to discover what beings could become when they refused to accept extinction as inevitable. The Devourers were returning to find a very different galaxy than the one they had harvested before. This time, their prey had become something that could hunt them back.